welcome back to my channel. Nice to see everybody once again. Today, what I wanted to discuss, and I thought you might be interested in, especially as a nurse having to deal with a lot of death, dying, that type of thing. One of the things I noticed always, from the most part, people that have not had anybody pass away in their families, is they're not sure what to do next. And usually I go through that with them, and I think I'll go through it with you now in case you need a reminder. Not everybody has gone to a funeral, especially young people. And for example, if your child has just passed away, God love you, but if they have, one of the things you need to know is that when that time happens, or should it happen with an infant or a child, everything will apply the same as it does to an adult. Okay, so for the adult and for the family, for the children, you're going to approach everything the same way. When they're young, you don't have any wills pending for them. So you are the one that's going to take on that responsibility to where you want your child or loved one to go, correct? Most people don't have a grave site, a plot, a family plot. Some want them cremated, people want to be sprinkled anywhere, or a specific country maybe. And this becomes hard if you have to travel to do that with the ashes. However, that can be done. But one of the things you have to know to do is if the person's passed away in the hospital, what we will do is notify the attending immediately. We usually do the pronouncing there. If there is something wrong, if they come into the hospital within 24 hours, they usually want an autopsy done so that we can see what the cause of death was. And that extends to, should there be an operation that has taken a long time, it's very, comprehensive, it had a lot of problems with it. You probably had a lot of problems before it's come up to that. They may have had a few surgeries ahead of time. Once again, the coroner will be called, and he will decide, or she will decide, should you need an autopsy. In most cases, it is a yes. They do want one to see what has happened and relay that message to you as the cause of death. Okay? In which case, you will not be able to spend a lot of time with that person, as we have to get them ready to go with the coroner. And the coroner will be in to examine all records and things like that. If it's a straight passing away, then that's not a problem. If most places, we will tell you that you can go ahead and visit for as long as you like until you're comfortable to leave. Okay, there's no rush to leave the loved ones or the babies by themselves. If they are already in an area other than the intensive care and the floors, we may take them to another viewing area on the main level. And that means that, there's chairs there, it's comfortable, and you can have a seat and still hold their hand and whatnot. We don't mind that whatsoever. So what happens next? You will notify us immediately as to, where do you want the body to go? Where would you like your loved one to be? Is there a specific funeral parlor? Are you going to view them at home? And you let us know. We need to call a funeral parlor and let them know that the loved one has passed away and that they can come and get them at what time you designate. Okay? It's not up to us. This is your quality time for the last time. So we're not going to rush you on any means. So you just let us know that. And if you know what the preference is, we will gladly tell them then. And what will happen is, once they come to pick up your loved one, We sign papers to release them from the hospital. Okay. If it is a home, we're going to release them, signing them off from our departments. Okay. Because we do have outpost nursing as well. So we release the body to the one that's picking them up as a legal process so that everybody knows what's happened so far. They will then take all that information from us without speaking to you first. And usually, if the attending is there when you're there, they're going to let us know, we're here to get the person, whoever it is, Mr. Jones or Eric Jones. And, we give them all the credentials for that, and they will turn to see if there's any family. If there is, what they're going to do is just notify you that could you make an appointment first thing in the morning to that funeral parlor, and then they're going to give you a time that's suitable to you so that you can come in and make arrangements for your loved one. Usually that is to the highlight of it, but they're going to work with you always. It's the same thing for everybody every time. They're going to walk you through the whole precision of paperwork. And, do you want a burial? Do you want a cremation? Do you want them to pick out the items? They will suggest a different caskets or maybe urns, and you will have, whatever you want to choose from. If it's you that is picking it out for you, when it becomes your will, the same things will apply to the family. They will walk the family through every step of that after we say goodbye. And when you go in to see them, they will, or for the loved one that's already made plans, you will go through that. Okay. And my goodness, everyone I've dealt with has been lovely for the family. They really have. The other thing you will have to know is that as you get into your 40s or so, you're going to want to have your will drawn up. And it may not seem appropriate at the time. However, should you get hit by a car, should you have an explosion somewhere, should you have a heart attack. Now, a few of my friends in their late 30s had heart attacks. And of course, the wives had to deal with what happens next. Some were accidental deaths. And again, because they were young friends of mine, they didn't have anything. So, of course, it just goes through the lawyers and law and the courts, and they will make that determination. And I'm not really anything legally okay that way. So I'm usually just listening to what happens when they're talking to you and discussing it. So in that case, it would be better as you get into your 40s to make a will. Now, if the will's drawn up, you put it in safekeeping, okay, and let whoever know who you want to look after your will. Usually we have someone in mind, a family member or a lawyer. A lawyer will, take care of everything, look after who gets notified, as will whoever the public person is that you've designated. Lawyers can be a little costly, whereas your loved ones aren't going to be that costly. Then they will look after belongings. So all these things should be in place. Having said that, remember that as we get older sometimes, we either don't have what we had before. Maybe we had a house, we sold it. Now we live in a small apartment. Things like that will be changed in your will. So if you find you have a lot of things that have changed, try and, as long as you know it's been in the last 10 years, 15 years, you can have that remodified for a less price, again, with the lawyer. And some things may have to be taken out and some things may have to be added, but they'll make sure, because sometimes the ones we're going to leave it to have predeceased us. And you have to decide where you want those things to go. Okay. I've had mine changed a couple of times, and because there were so many years between them, um, it costs a little bit more. But when you're in that 10-year mark or so that you need it changed, you can definitely go and make that appointment and go through it with the lawyer. She just, as long as you take it in when you go and write it down in a pen and paper and pass it to them, he or she can go ahead and make the modifications to the will that you have, and it just takes up less time and it costs less money because they only have to see you once or twice. Okay. And that's preferably what you should be looking at. Also, in your 40s, I would suggest, now this is something that my husband got me into, and I love the idea, but you can start prepaying for your own funeral. Well, my husband and I decided that we don't want family having to go to the stress of saying, like, what would mom want? What would dad want? What would they want? Like, we're like, okay, we're doing this. And in fact, I actually went out and said, okay, if I'm going to be cremated, for example, I'm going to pick up my own urn. And I did. And my thing is, I'm sorry, my thing is, um, if I have to pay the funeral parlor $4,000 for an urn, I could probably get one a lot cheaper. I mean, funerals now are just so costly. And so I would tell them, like, you go ahead, yeah, I'll get my own, in which I already did. And it's already ready. I told everybody where it was. And, it was in storage. And I said, yeah, just go get that because it's already paid for. You don't have to pay for anything. Name's on it. Enjoy. I said, that's the fastest way around it. So you don't have to spend extra money. The other thing we decided to do was prepay for the funeral. And you can pay as little as $50 a month, especially, and that's for the caskets and the funeral arrangements. And if you have your own land, you're lucky because now it costs quite a bit. If you don't have one for your family and you think you should, then ask your children, ask your significant other, is this something you think we could do? Okay. And if everybody said yes, as a family plot, we could do that. So we have a family plot, for example, of 6, and with 6 grandchildren, they're able to actually go in our plots under their parents because everybody else will be cremated. And there's definitely room because the plots are actually casket size. So that cuts down on how much everybody's paying for those plots. But also, it gives everybody a place under one family that they can be buried. And I've seen more of that since, I guess it was about 5 years ago when a gentleman's sister was passing away and the family didn't know what to do with her for burial. So I just kind of mentioned, like, is there somewhere that they mentioned this, or your mom and dad said something, or your sister said something? And all of a sudden, like, right out of his head, the young fella said, yes, I think she said she was going with mom. And then all of a sudden, we all had this little conversation with the family, and that's what they said. Yes, everybody agreed that the children were going to be cremated and going in with mom or dad. And when I made the call for them to set up an appointment, and I explained to the burial site people, um, cemeteries, what this was, going to be about, they were like, oh, we've just started doing that. Yeah, a lot of people don't have any place. And so, because they're going to do the cremation and not the burial, yeah, it's really easy to put those ones in there. And I thought, yes, now I can let people know because it really is hard when all of a sudden you have no land you don't know where to go, and the last thing is just sprinkle you under the family tree. And we have just talked about this as well. If you're going to think about sprinkling ashes under a tree, it's really not advised in water. It's illegal. They call it contamination of the waters. So you really can't put it in a river or anything like that, but most people wouldn't even notice. Um, However, if you want to be under a specific tree in your present backyard, remember that someday somebody else will have your house, or a big apartment building, maybe built on your house. So is that something that you really want? Because you're probably going to end up getting dug up, and they're going to have to decide what happens, or not at all. They'll just bury further down. So it's not really a nice place to be, I don't think, if your family want to visit your site that, nobody has a clue where you went to. So it might be an idea to just kind of keep that in your mind, and pick something that everybody can either move to, or just you and your husband and children may even want an area, which would even be less than a whole family. We just chose the whole family because we're a strong family, and that's what we all wanted to be together. So I'm just going to leave you with that bit of information, because as we get on to that time, and I've spent time with people doing these things, I thought, while we're talking about different things that we can save some dollars, I think it's important for everybody to know that in your late to mid 40s, that's the time to make your first will. By lawyer, so that it can't be contested against by any family member. And when we're gone, we notice that all of a sudden the arguments start. Well, mom said I could have that, and mom said I could have that, and dad said I wanted this, and he was going to give me that, and that's the time that once the paper comes out, everybody knows what they're going to get. It's not writing your name on the back of a picture. That means nothing by a court of law, okay? But having it legally ground up or wrote up, that's perfect. So I'll leave you with that thought. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. I'm sure it is slightly different in most places, but for the most part, it will not be. It would be pretty much like that, exactly like that. So if you don't mind, while you're there, can you hit the like button and subscribe? And I will see you again later. Have a great day.